You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Ian, look at this.
What, it's a police box. What on earth is he doing here? I mean, these things are usually on the street. Oh, feel it. Feel it, you feel it?
It's a faint vibration.
It's alive.
Earth Station Who? A fun mashup celebrating nearly 50 years of Doctor Who universe. Hold tight. You never know where the TARDIS is going next.
Who are you?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that again. Bit of adrenaline, dash of outrage, and a hint of panic knitted my brain back together. I know exactly who I am. I'm the Doctor. Sorting out fair play throughout the universe. Now please, get off this planet while you still have a choice.
Hey everyone, welcome to the newest episode of Earth Station Who. That's right, folks. We have survived Dragon Con, and we are back. And I wish we could say we were back under better circumstances, but right actually in the middle of Dragon Con, we had gotten notices, probably all of us who are on the show tonight, that Terrance had passed away. And he, for a lot of us, was Doctor Who, more in some ways than the doctors themselves, because he's the man who brought so many stories to life. And personally, he was my Doctor Who, because I was stuck in the era when they just kept on showing the Fourth Doctor over and over and over again on PBS. So I started picking up the Target books. And how many of those did he write? And he brought the Doctor Who experience with the first couple Doctors to life for me. And it was just amazing. And I actually told him this because I met him at Timegate when, Alan, you guys had him there.
Yeah,
so
we were lucky enough to have him twice.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be talking all about it. Let me introduce the guests we have for tonight. Of course, Alan Siler's here.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome, my friend.
Glad to be here, as always.
It's going to be great to talk about this with everybody tonight. We also have Randy Stewart joining us for the first time.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, Mike.
Hey, no problem, Randy. Actually, you're the one who broke the news about this to me at the con. And it was just like, because you were just like, started instant messaging me. And it's like, oh, geez, really? And it was really shocking.
Yeah, it really shocked me when I read about it, because I think, at least for me, Terrance Dicks was the first name I ever associated with Doctor Who outside of any of the actors, from
exactly
books and everything. So it was huge news. It was huge news. I'm glad we're able to talk about it tonight.
We're going to have a great discussion about it in a few minutes. We also have our regulars, of course. They did survive Dragon Con also. Let's welcome Mary Ogle and Mike Gordon. Hey, guys.
Hey.
So, Mary, you did okay with surviving Dragon Con?
I barely survived it. I did end up with con crud, but it's mostly over with now.
Oh, glad to hear that. Barbara okay?
Barbara's doing okay. I blame her. She got it first.
Of course. And thank goodness your roommates got off lucky. We didn't get it.
Yeah, How did that happen?
I don't know. Maybe, you got it from the Canadians who were staying with us or something.
Yes, let's always blame the Canadians.
Of course. It's the easiest way to do it.
Blame Canada.
Exactly.
You don't know what kind of diseases they're going to bring from that country.
Exactly. And
they need to screen them better.
And Mikey, you made it okay through Dragon Con?
Yeah, well, it's still an ongoing recovery process. I figure, after we record the final 2019 Dragon Con report, which is next week, then I can put some closure to the event. So
that's good. That is good.
Rest up and then get ready for 2020.
Oh, geez. Yep. I think it's time. 2020 is right around the corner already.
But since we're talking about Dragon Con, we didn't get a chance since we were recording. Last week was our panel that we did. But just want to give a big shout out and thank you to everybody who came to the panel, everybody who reached out to us, said they listened to the show. It was really fun meeting everybody, talking to people who've been listening to us since day one, as well as people who've been listening to us. And then probably there's some people that are listening to us for the first time in this episode. So welcome. It's great to meet you at Dragon Con. And I hope we don't tick you off too much.
Nah, I don't think we will. At least this episode, I don't think we will. And it's funny. We got written by a couple people saying they really wanted to see us at Dragon Con, but they were standing in line for David Tennant while our panel was going on.
I cannot believe they would choose David Tennant over us.
I know.
I told
priorities.
I wrote them back and said they weren't real fans. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So you could, of course, we want to hear from you guys. Definitely write us at earthstationwho@esonetwork.com. And we would definitely love to hear from you guys. How was your con? How was, getting over it and everything? Did you get to meet the doctor? Did you get to meet Donna or, Martha? There was a lot of Doctor Who at the con this year, which is really nice. And I know, some of my friends actually out in Seattle drove down to Portland and they got to meet the Ninth Doctor. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, awesome.
So, yeah, it's pretty awesome. Rose City Comic Con.
Who'd have thought it? Like, I think just a few years ago, we were all like, Chris is never going to do the convention. He's never going to do this. He's never going to do that. And,
maybe Dragon Con next year.
Next thing you know, we'll be hearing about him doing Big Finish.
Yeah, I won't be surprised at all if he does.
Yeah.
I also won't be surprised if he's the big Doctor Who guest at Dragon next year.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that also, Alan.
Just total speculation, but I'll just bet you that's going to be the number one on their to get list.
Oh,
well, they're going in reverse order.
That's true.
they're counting down.
That is true. That is very true. So then, if next year is 9, then I guess we'll get Paul McGann the year after that.
There you go.
Hey, that would be pretty awesome. Or, God forbid, Jodie, maybe? Huh? Maybe? Could be?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Never say never.
I would love to say that.
Probably not while she's still in production.
Right.
No, because they're usually filming during Dragon Con time.
Yeah, that's true.
And let me just say then, if that's the case, then I hope we don't get her at Dragon Con very soon.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, don't believe any of those rumors you're hearing, folks. Come on, we know better than
those are
that.
just silly rumors.
Exactly. Of course, we are up on social media. You could find us up on a Facebook group, or we also have a Twitter. So, definitely find Earth Station Who. We definitely would love to socialize with you guys, talk about our favorite Doctor Who moments and such. And we're going to be talking a lot about that tonight when we talk about Terrance Dicks. But before we do, let's also give a great shout out to our patrons. Thank you guys for all the support you guys have been giving us. And, it's just been great. And you guys could hear this podcast 48 hours before the rest of the world does. So as a patron, it's a little bit of a gift to you guys. We give you guys some Earth Station 1, Earth Station Who, and the Dragon Con report 48 hours before. And of course, there's also exclusive material that you guys get also. And for as little as 25 cents a week, you could become a patron of the ESO network. Not too shabby. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/ESO network. Pretty straightforward. So with that being said, let's go into any Doctor Who news. And we actually do have one little bit of Doctor Who news. A little bit. It just actually was leaked out today that Stephen Fry is going to be in the very first episode of the new season of Doctor Who. No idea when it's coming to us, but he is going to be in the first episode. And so
I'm surprised. Has his paths ever crossed with Doctor Who before? It seems like it was inevitable.
Yes,
right?
He wrote an episode that was supposed to be produced in season 2. It got shoved back to season 3 for budgetary reasons, and then never got done in season 3. And so far, it's never been done. So that's his whole Doctor Who career thus far. Wow. Is one episode that has never been produced.
So he hasn't ever had like even a cameo or anything like that?
No.
I don't think so.
Wow. Because I'd almost expect him, the one that they did for the comedy special for the Red Nose event, that I was surprised he wasn't one of the doctors in that, in the Regenerations or something. Which would have been really awesome. But, I'm very excited to hear that. And as more Doctor Who news comes out, we'll let you guys know. Wow. That's it for Doctor Who news. Throwing everything at those, definitely a lot of people had great experiences at Dragon Con meeting David Tennant, for 45 seconds here for a picture or an autograph there. But for everyone who met him, I heard wonderful things. I didn't hear one negative about him.
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah, and I did get a chance to meet Freema for a little while, and she was amazingly sweet and awesome. So I definitely encourage folks out there to meet her as well. I know that a lot of times you'll see doctors and companions, and the companions are always sitting there with not a lot of people in their line, while the doctors have tons of people in their line. So give the companions some love too.
Well, I heard like Catherine Tate was out in front of her table almost the whole time.
She
Catherine just works.
Yeah.
She works. She knows how to work.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Exactly. Well, she didn't even have a moderator for her panel.
No, she always does that too.
Which is really awesome. She gets down there with the people who are there to see her. And it's just so warm and so caring that, she does that for them and everything. Mm-hmm. I love that.
That's really cool. That's really generous of her to do that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it shows that, she's thankful for being there and for the people coming to see her. And that's the best kind of way you could do it.
Yeah, agreed.
And, speaking as a moderator who's had their person just go off and do their own thing at cons, Mark Shepard, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you, Mark Shepard. I really am. So it was, if I didn't have to be up there, if I knew that's what he was going to do, I pretty much would have just sat in the audience rather and enjoyed his talking instead of, being up there and him saying, you don't have anything interesting to say. I'm going to go talk to them, So it's just.
But see, we were part of the entertainment.
Oh, of course.
I mean,
but Alan, I know you've done moderation.
He needed a foil.
Yeah. He was there to perform, and that's what he did.
Exactly.
Do a lot of guests prefer to have a moderator at these events?
It depends on the comfort level, but I would say that most of them do.
Yeah.
Just because a lot of them are not there to put on a show or entertain. They're there because of the fans, and they're there to answer questions and everything like that. But they don't usually come with something prepared or anything like that.
The real mold breaker in this thing is John Barrowman.
Oh wow!
No one
he's got a whole other level.
And Barrowman is the one who got Tate doing these things. So I'm sure that he, this is how he does it, so that's how she does it. And they're both such performers. They're both showmen. So, it comes naturally for them. They don't need a moderator. A lot of people do. A lot of people don't know, the con scene, and they, but those two are just natural stage presences.
Yeah, I wouldn't even, I always think of Catherine Tate as sort of a British equivalent of like a Carol Burnett, right?
Mm-hmm.
She obviously she has that sketch comedy show for a while that was really popular. She's very funny, but she knows how to work the crowd. And like a lot of times when I see her on panels and everything, it reminds me of when Carol used to talk to the audience before her shows and all that kind of stuff. And she just has an energy that she just really connects with people. And that's what she's in it for, to connect with people and to perform in front of live people. Like,
Yep.
Live audiences.
Of course.
Not dead people. As opposed to dead people.
Yeah.
We don't know what her...
Which, by Monday morning at Dragon Con, everybody is pretty much dead. So.
yeah.
I was going to say, I've seen some of those audiences at Dragon Con on Monday morning, and they're just like, so it's tough.
But I think, almost all of them really, especially with New Who, have embraced the celebrity con experience. I've never heard anybody complain about anybody from New Who, at least, and Classic Who as well. I mean, I think it's been something that is a great experience. I mean, it certainly with the larger cons like Dragon Con, San Diego, New York, et cetera, they're huge. But also the more intimate cons like Hulanta was, and Chicago TARDIS and Gallifrey, I've never heard anything bad said about, any of the actors or participants of New Who.
As a con runner, I will say that getting into the Doctor Who field, you're incredibly lucky because the people that you have to book as guests and as entertainment for your crowd are all, almost without exception, really, really wonderful people. I did Wholanta for 15 years, and not a single time do I feel like we got burned by anybody. Every person that we booked and you go to a lot of expense to pay these people their appearance fee and to book first class flights, and it's all this and they come over and they're just wonderful. Every single one of them has really been genuinely wonderful. And I'm so thankful for that.
That's good to hear.
That is really good to hear. And most of the people we've met through Doctor Who, through your con, through some of the other cons we've gone to, have just always been so grateful to talk to us, to be up there and to just, be in front of the people and get to meet the people who want to see them. It has just always been awesome.
And it's one of those things where, it's not, sure, a lot of actors are looking at it when they get a part, on Doctor Who as a job, but it really is more than that. It really is more than that. And it can be as much as they want it to be.
Yeah. Well, and then you look at the cast members from Classic who just took their job, because they were struggling actors. They got a part here or a part there. If they were lucky, they were able to get the role of a companion. And they never looked at it as making classic television. And in some cases, it's 10 or 15 years later, they come over to the United States and suddenly they're adored. And that had to be so fulfilling for these actors and for these, for these working actors to all of a sudden discover a whole new audience of people who just absolutely embrace them.
Oh, sure. You take, especially, you're going to do Doctor Who. Oh my God. Especially back in the 70s and 80s. And, it was a job, like you said, but these people are memorized and known by all these legions of fans. And I'm sure it's like it makes you feel appreciated and loved. And it's just awesome.
I will never forget. I heard Louise Jameson years ago. She before and after Doctor Who, she's had quite a career both on television and on stage. And I will never forget. She said one time how loyal Doctor Who fans are. She said, every acting career is ebbs and flows. There'll be times when there's, you have too much work that you can possibly do. And then other times when there just aren't offers coming in. And she said every time she got into a low period, Doctor Who fans were always there. She always had her Doctor Who audience. And I think that's really kind of awesome.
Oh, exactly. And, let's hopefully keep this up. Let's keep it going. And, let's keep them, make sure they're appreciated so they'll keep on coming back.
Absolutely.
Best way. Or like when Mary and I were at Gallifrey that one year and we were wandering through the vendor hall and we saw some Second Doctor posters and such. And we were like, "Oh, these are the great. These are awesome." And it was actually Fraser's table.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and Fraser was like, "Why, thank you." And we were like, we were starstruck.
That is one of my favorite moments of any con. He was just amazing. It was fantastic to meet him, and we were just
it's
like,
Jamie.
Ah!
Yeah.
It was just awesome.
Yeah, he is.
So, all right, folks, we definitely would love to hear about you guys at home. Please write us at earthstationwho@esonetwork.com. Tell us about your experiences. Let's take a quick break, and we will be back in a moment when we get into talking all about Terrance Dicks.
The answer, the ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything is 42.
That's right, Broad Speculation. And on the 42 cast, we bring you drama-free discussions on television shows, movies, video games, novels, and comics. So don't bother thinking about the question, just go straight to the answer. It's only on the 42 cast, your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything.
Welcome back to Earth Station Who, and now we are here remembering Terrance Dicks. We've already started remembering him in the beginning segment. It's just, he had such a great, influence to probably all of us here on the show tonight. And, through his writing for the show, doing his, story editing, to writing the novels, and all his work away from Doctor Who. I know when I was talking to a few different people, they're just like, oh, what about this, and this? And it was just amazing. And then when Randy was like writing me, he was sending me all these different, things that Terrance had worked on. So it was pretty amazing. I can't even remember when I first discovered Terrance Dicks. It was probably through the books more than even the TV show, because he was just a name to me on the TV show, watching, the early Tom Baker years. But the Target books were really, the paperbacks were what got me into him, and he became a legend to me. What about with the rest of you guys? Let's, Alan, what about you?
Probably the same thing. I got into Doctor Who. Well, actually, no, that's not true, because the very first Doctor Who I ever watched was The Five Doctors on November 23rd, 1983. So Terrance, written by Terrance Dicks, is like the first Doctor Who name I ever saw.
Sure.
Yeah. So from there, I'm sure it was, because at that point, the PBS station that I was watching in Tampa, Florida, was showing that, as a one-off. And then the following week, they circled back to the shows that they were already showing in their schedule, which was, mid Tom Baker. So the next time would have been the vampire one, State of Decay.
Oh, yeah, right.
The next time that I saw his name on screen. So it would have to have been starting reading the novelizations,
right,
where I started to really see his name on a regular basis.
Oh, sure. All right. What about Mike?
Well, that's tough. Because I was, growing up, I was so into the Fourth Doctor, and although Terrance had written a lot for the Fourth Doctor, about a handful of episodes. Of course, one's not even credited to him, so I wouldn't have known it. But yeah, I don't think he was really on my radar until, maybe a few years ago when I started really seriously getting into classic Doctor Who and making it an effort to really, watch Doctor Who from the beginning. And of course, joining, the Earth Station Who crew, as I discovered a lot of classic stories. And I know that, the novelizations and everything like that and the scripts are amazing. But to me, whenever I think of him as being just really awesome in all of the special features, the documentaries that they do for each of the episodes. Because
Agreed.
He is, obviously he was there, and so he knows, the stuff that happened then and there. But he's not. He strikes me as someone who's never afraid to say what's on his mind or how it is, or he'll tell you, like, this is something that we tried to do and we messed it up. Like, we just messed it up. It didn't work. He's not above apologizing for past mistakes and just laying it out the way it was. You get this. I really find his frankness and really refreshing. Because a lot of people are just trying to, talk, maybe, cover stuff up or just give the quote unquote politically correct answer or whatever. But Terrance would just lay it out like, this is how it was. And, if it makes it onto the documentary, so what? I can't imagine what would be on the cutting room floor.
No, totally understand that. What about you, Mary?
Well, to me, my first memory of Terrance Dicks is Horror of Fame Rock.
Sure.
Yeah. It's for some reason, and I wasn't as into Doctor Who when I was a kid, but I did see them on PBS, a lot of the Fourth Doctor over and over again. But Horror of Fame Rock just stayed with me there was just something about the way it was written and the claustrophobic feeling and the people getting picked off one by one. I mean, it was just, it was very tight and it was very atmospheric. And that was sort of a hallmark of Terrance Dicks's writings. I like that about his books too. I read some of his books, and there's just, his writing really draws you in. I mean, I think he's even had an influence on me as a writer myself. So yeah, it's a sad day that we lost him, because he was such a huge influence throughout the whole series in many different ways. It still is today.
Oh, of course. No, totally understand. Randy, what about you?
Well, I think I first discovered Terrance Dicks when I picked up a copy of the Five Doctors Target novel, and I think I'd just seen the episode, and I picked up the novel, and then as I started collecting the novels, I started seeing his name more and more, because I think he wrote something like 60 of them.
Yeah, 67 total.
Right. Yeah, he wrote a massive amount. He was just so prolific with them. But it really wasn't until I went back and watched the program from the Hartnell episodes straight through and got to that period at the end of the Patrick Troughton stories and into the John Pertwee stories, and really could see his influence. And David J. Howe wrote a great book called The Third Doctor Handbook, and has a chapter in there called Rewriting the Mythology of Doctor Who. And he just covered all of these amazing things that Terrance, whether or not Terrance created them, because he was script editor and other writers contributed or not, but he obviously had a hand in it. But I mean, he created the Time Lords with Malcolm Hulke. He named Gallifrey. He coined the term regeneration. He created all of these memorable characters, Sergeant Benton and Sarah Jane and Joe Grant. But then he also brought things out like that the TARDIS is indestructible, or the TARDIS can be remote controlled, or that it has a telepathic circuit. It might be a sentient being. And he just added so much richness over his, 5 years in the program. It literally, he just brought so much to it that it just kind of blew me away once I got an opportunity to really watch the program from First Doctor into the Fourth Doctor and really see just his thumbprint. And I said, wow, this guy, this is a creative mind that really rewrote the show and took it someplace very special and very different. I think that's the reason it exists.
He created
today.
A lot of the mythos for it.
He really did.
Was he the one who came up with the 12 regenerations, or?
No, that would be Robert Holmes.
Okay. So, because I know a lot, that was all still in that same era.
And, definitely.
And so that's awesome, though, because.
Yeah, and if I may, he and Barry Letts also took the show into political areas.
Oh, very much. So.
like the UK entering the European Union, or colonialism and apartheid with like the mutants, or respect for all life in the Sontarans. Where John Pertwee is sitting here looking at the Brigadier saying, did you really have to do that? And then the women's rights issues with Sarah Jane. He made Doctor Who relevant to a much broader audience.
Yeah, there was a new producer, showrunner.
Oh, sure. And he was still in charge and working all the time on it. With one of the most popular eras of Doctor Who. So it's pretty cool with that.
It's funny that, after producing or script editing the show for 5.5 years, from the end of Troughton up through the entirety of John Pertwee, he hired Robert Holmes a number of times as scriptwriter. And then Robert Holmes became the script editor right after him. And he said, we have this long-standing tradition with Doctor Who and in television where the outgoing script editor gets hired to write the first story for the next script editor. And Robert Holmes is like, oh, okay, well, do you want to write Tom Baker's first one? He said, well, of course I do. So he talked himself into getting a job immediately after leaving the script editor post, which I think is wonderful.
That is awesome. That's right, because they were pretty much bringing in a whole new crew between Pertwee and Tom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was... Yeah, exactly. And then Terrance is like, I'll write for it. Sure. That's pretty awesome. That is really awesome.
Well, he always strikes me too as somebody who's just amazingly practical and down to earth and asks he's able to take story ideas, character ideas, and break them down to the simplest form and ask the simple, logical questions, right? And there's a lot of times where you'll see in the bonus material where he'll be the one as script editor to, if a writer is stuck on something or if they're trying to do something, he's the one that says, well, let's look at it and break it down and why is this happening? Well, obviously, if you're doing X, Y, and Z, then this must follow, right? And get people right on track. I think that's why he made a perfect editor that way.
No, exactly. And to go on what you were saying, how approachable he was. I met him at Timegate when sitting right in the bar, right there, in the Holiday Inn. And it was just like, that's Terrance Dicks. And I walked up to him and I literally said what I said at the beginning of the show. It's like, you were my intro to Doctor Who. And he says, oh, no. He was very, and we sat there for 30 minutes talking. It was awesome.
He loved hanging out at the bar. Not necessarily that loved the drink. He loved the social aspect of it. He loved, and this is a gentleman who, had a career length influence on Doctor Who. I have no problem with him sitting at a bar and just letting people tell him how great he is. Because if anybody has earned that, he did. And he loved talking with fans. He loved hearing what they, Kate got out of Doctor Who. He loved being able to share his stories of it. Yeah, it was great.
I have to thank you, Alan, and the whole crew at Timegate at the time, because that second appearance was the first time I got a chance to meet him as well. And unfortunately, I was fighting I was under the weather and I was fighting some cold. So I did not want to spend a lot of time with him because I certainly didn't want to be the cause of demise ultimately. But I did spend a few time with him. He signed a book of mine and I got to talk to him for a little bit, but I also made sure that I attended, I think, 3 panels that he did. And on each one of them, he was engaging. And even the ones where he was sort of sharing the stage with other people, as much of a presence as Terrance has, he didn't try to steal the show. I think a lot of people would look at him like, well, why don't you tell us, Terrance? But he seemed like he was gracious as a panelist as well.
I don't remember if it was the first time or the second time that we had him at Timegate, but the Saturday of the con coincided exactly with, I guess it was the 40 years from the night that one of the episodes of the War Games aired. I think it was episode 6. So we spent an hour just talking in depth about the War Games and how, the War Games is an interesting story because at 10 episodes, he and Derek Sherwin Malcolm Hulk, were just writing. And the show went into production on episode 1 before they had the second half of the story even written. So that's how tight the production schedule was at the time. And so just to be able to go into, real depth with Terrance Dicks on the construction of that story. And then we screened episode 6, the one that had happened 40 years ago that very night. It was a really, really cool experience.
I think the thing about Terrance that just really impressed me was he was so well read because he just loved reading and had loved reading since he was a child. But he was such a professional and he was so approachable. He was everything that they say you shouldn't go out and meet your heroes because you're going to be disappointed. And I have to say that it absolutely was not the case when I got an opportunity to meet him at that Timegate. He was very approachable and very generous, but he was also very professional. Mm-hmm. And as you said, Mike, he would be willing to give somebody else the stage, or I think he was generally interested in the people who were talking with him. He was just such a phenomenal creative mind that it was just getting an opportunity to meet him just didn't disappoint.
It's what my family would call a mensch. He totally was. No, and it's true because he had no problems, sharing, like you said, sharing a stage or, just talking and, getting into details and, oh yeah, I remember that. And he would go and talk about, different scenes he wrote or dealing with different actors or he used to tell stories. When the one time I met him, he told us stories about one of the cons, the bigger cons he was at, and how people would just like walk up to him, expect him to sign something and not even talk to him. And he's like, wait, I want to talk to you and everything. And it was just awesome.
Yeah, I did get the impression from him many times that in addition, I mean, he had no trouble being the center of attention, but he didn't crave it. And oftentimes you can tell, like, some of the best creators are the ones who can listen, right? They're the ones who can listen to other people's stories and apply them. And I think that's what he was able to do as well. I mean, looking at his background, I don't know a lot about his background. Actually, I don't know a lot about him outside of Doctor Who. So, but I understand that he was an avid reader from a young age. And obviously those classic stories that he just ate up, like, stayed with him. And he was able to put them to use. But does anybody know, like, so other than Doctor Who, like, did he make an impact or create, like, was he a creative force in any other, like, series or endeavor?
He and Barry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say he and Barry, you're right, did do a short-lived program called Moonbase 3, which was a very straightforward science fiction, no bug-eyed monsters.
At that point, he was probably like, no monsters.
And he felt it was actually kind of a failure because he wasn't able to bring the enlightenment and the enjoyment and the surprise and the fantasy into it. So overall, that was one he felt was just kind of middle of the road. But I know he and Barry did a lot of the classic series together. Back when the BBC would do classic shows, he did Charles Dickens.
Yeah, he was. What was the series? The Sunday Play or the Sunday? I don't remember. But Barry was the producer of it, and Terrance was the script editor for it for years after Doctor Who. And then actually Barry Letts left it. He left the BBC, and Terrance Dicks took over the show. So he was producer, and I don't know if he was also script editing at the same time for the rest of that series. But he wrote a couple of episodes of Space 1999. The biggest thing that he did, though, was he was a novelist, and he wrote 67 Doctor Who novels, but he wrote at least twice that many young adult novels and children's novels. And I mean, his list of publications is extensive.
I remember William read Jonathan's Ghost by Terrance Dicks.
Oh, wow. Cool.
When he was younger. So, and it was like, I looked at it and said, Terrance Dicks? Really? And it was like, and William was like, who's he? And I was like, oh, dude, you and I have to talk. Yeah, exactly.
In the ways. He had a series, either children or young adult, I don't remember, but a series called The Baker Street Irregulars, which was sort of loosely based on Sherlock Holmes. He had a children's series called Sally Ann, which was a ragdoll character that he wrote a bunch of novels. He just had an extensive career as a novelist. I just can't imagine. And so much of that was going on at the same time. He was writing all the Doctor Who novelizations, and I just don't know how in the world he did all that.
And the thing is, when he did the novelizations, I found this just digging through some articles online that in 1980, his Target novels had already sold 3.5 million copies. In 1980,
wow,
and had been translated into 10 languages.
That's so.
I mean. And that was 1980. The books were still going up until the 90s. So, and that was just the Doctor Who range. That's not all of these other his other creative novels. I mean, talk about a prolific writer.
Yeah.
I mean, this man just didn't stop.
He was a workhorse.
Absolutely.
Now, as far as the Target novelizations, because I haven't read a lot of them, nor can I compare them with the actual series. But I think I recall at some point, maybe on one of the extras, that a lot of times he would use the novelizations to fix or correct things that maybe didn't go well in the production, or things that weren't explained or anything like that. So a lot of times the novelizations are, I don't want to say better, but they're more fleshed out.
They're fuller.
So
exactly.
They're worth checking out, even if you've watched them. To read that adaptation you'll get like the full story, so to speak.
Oh, there were some of the novelizations I read way before I actually saw the actual series, and I was like, that's not how I pictured it in my mind when I was watching it. And there were times when I thought what Terrance did was better than what the TV series did. And it was just, I can't name anything right particular off the top of my head, but it was just always like, whoa, or I haven't seen this one, but this is all familiar. Oh, I read the book. That's right.
Also, he was so good with characterization. I mean, that comes through in both his books and his TV shows. And I mean, there's a certain warmth and generosity of spirit that comes through in his writing. You can tell he was kind of an observer of people, that he listened to them and then he translated that to the page. That really came through as a writer.
He actually got his start, aside from doing a couple of Avengers episodes, he started in soap operas. He started on Crossroads. And so I think, interestingly enough, so did Russell T. Davies. He got his start in soap operas as well. So I think they really took their time and learned how to write, how to create drama by looking at the world around them.
Well, and soap operas will that's a crash course in learning how to adjust and write in a very fast environment, like hectic environment.
Exactly.
That's true.
So if you're a writer and you can write, like, you can last a year on a soap opera, you can be in TV for decades.
Yep.
So.
But you were saying you were asking Mike if anybody remembered reading something in a book and then seeing it later and it just not quite being as powerful, and that was Green Maggots for me. I remember reading Green long before they ever brought the Pertwees to Atlanta. The Pertwee stories on public TV, and it just wasn't quite as powerful seeing the dragonfly hanging from a string chasing the Pertwee around. It wasn't quite as dramatic and powerful as it was in my mind, reading the novel.
Agreed.
And it's just interesting to see that. And was he involved with, since he was all the way from Patrick's era all the way through basically almost the Fifth Doctor in some ways, any of the Doctor selections and such?
Pertwee, yeah. I don't think it is. Well, and maybe Tom. And in fact, I'm sure it was Tom, because I'm pretty sure that he and Barry were the ones who, I can't remember the name of the guy at the BBC who knew Tom, who had been at Tom's school. And he said, there's this guy you should really look at for your next Doctor. And I'm sure it was Terrance and Barry who went to see the Sinbad movie that Tom had done and said, yes, that's our Doctor. So I'm sure that they were the ones who cast Tom.
That's true.
I'd have to double check that, but I'm sure that that's right.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the previous producer and previous scriptwriter chose John Pertwee, and then as Barry and Terrance were on the way out, they chose Tom Baker. So that was just kind of that would have to be kind of interesting, being a producer following up and all of a sudden saying, well, I guess here's my actor. I don't have any choice in what we're going to, how we're going to take the show other than the words on the page, in terms of not being able to actually cast your lead actor. I just kind of thought that was interesting, that was kind of their last big influence together in Doctor Who was choosing Tom as the Fourth Doctor.
No, very true. So he's just the influences, and it's truly amazing when you come to think about it, staggering in a lot of ways. And like Mike Gordon had said earlier, all the work he had done on the extras on the DVDs up until recently.
Yeah, even like it was always, I mean, I have BritBox, so I love being able to just pull up a classic story whenever I want. But the reason why I really wanted to get, especially Tom's run and all of Patrick's run on DVD, was because I love the extras. And I love the making, because there's always usually one documentary about the making of that story. And, Terrance is on probably 75 if not 90% of them. Even the ones where he didn't have anything to do with sometimes, but and he's always great. Like every time he's on one, I'm like, okay, cool. Cause he's always got something interesting to say. So I really I felt like I got to know him through those, really. And I didn't know this, but I guess one of the first things, early on when he joined up with Doctor Who, one of the first things he did was like sort of a making of book, like a behind the scenes thing.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So he was always kind of your. He was actually doing those specials, documentaries, the Blu-ray specials before they even had those things going on. So
that is right. I'd forgotten about that. Pretty much the very first ever making of Doctor Who thing that was written was him. Amazing.
That I'll have to see if I can maybe track down that book now. Although it's probably like really expensive now. But I mean, it was probably really expensive before he passed, but now it's probably even more expensive. But also I don't know if this is a can of worms, and I certainly don't mean to open up anything, but do we know how he felt about New Who?
I was going to mention that earlier. I find it really interesting that when Russell T was relaunching the show, the first place he went to kind of as a framing device for the first episode for his new series was to go back to the Pertwee era and the Autons and, all that stuff that really feeds into exactly what the new series was all about. And Terrance and Barry were invited to the press screening for Rose, and they were given all this praise for their work, in the 70s. And I think for the most part they both really loved it, especially Russell's era.
I recall
a couple of books.
Yes, he did. He did. He wrote a couple of 10th Doctor and Martha.
Oh wow! Didn't know that.
Novels.
When he was at Timegate, he did say that he really enjoyed David Tennant as the Doctor. He said he didn't really care for the failed Christ metaphor that had wrapped around Tennant. And I found an interview with him online not too long ago where he said that he really was enjoying the Peter Capaldi stories, that he felt that they really got the feel and the character of the Doctor on the mark with Capaldi.
Oh man, I so agree with him on that.
But you look at Capaldi and you have the immediate tie back and the throwback to John
Absolutely.
Pertwee.
Definitely could see that. And it's good to hear that, he appreciated where it was going, because sometimes they could become embittered, especially like with remakes and such. Oh, I don't like what they're doing with it, that type of thing. And you never got that from him. And actually with a lot of people working on Who, you don't get that.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's just a show of what a good experience it was for all of them.
I also think too that shows how Russell first, but then certainly everybody who's come after him was such a fan of what had come before that they didn't alienate the past. They did everything they could to embrace it as much as they could.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It won't be long, and we'll be in an era where the people making Doctor Who did not grow up watching the classic series. And down the road, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I was watching Doctor Who way back in the old days in the very beginning with Eccleston and David Tennant. And that'll be classic Who to them. True. And it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic shift.
Well, yeah, because I would imagine at some point it was, because New Who really is, we grew up watching Doctor Who, whereas everybody prior to that, certainly Terrance, there was no Doctor Who to like. I mean, they wrote the book, right? I mean, he literally wrote the book, like 67 of them, right? So so they were coming in and they were just creating, whereas maybe, I don't know, maybe towards the end of the classic era, were there people on there that were like fans that grew up watching the show?
Yeah, John Nathan Turner. And in fact had worked on the show since, like early Pertwee. So he brought his whole wealth of knowledge and his love for the show into his era.
Gotcha.
So it was really the first time that the show fed specifically on past continuity. Yeah,
it's one of those things you have to be careful of because you don't want it to be a snake eating itself, right? You have to sort of add some new blood in there too, just to make sure that things don't get stagnant and stale. But I certainly have never felt that, that New Who has tried to or has gone out of their way to alienate or, tick off anybody from the past. As a matter of fact, they've done the opposite. Really. So as far, I mean, people who were almost forgotten or didn't have jobs or whatever have gotten, work and become like, at least in the convention circuit, alive again, thanks to Doctor Who. So.
Oh, a lot of the convention circuit has, brought back a lot of shows, but Doctor Who, more than a lot of them. It's pretty awesome. And, it's funny because when we did watch Galaxy Quest recently, and when we were watching it, I was like thinking, this could be Doctor Who also, instead of, a Shatner type character, it could have been a Tom Baker type character and, the whole thing. Look, and the aliens watching historical, we built our own TARDIS for you,
Would you guys say that there's anything particular of the Doctor Who franchise, whether it be a character or a race, that has Terrance's definite mark on, that is still maybe even being used today?
Sarah Jane Smith.
I love Sarah Jane.
Yeah.
She's my favorite companion. So thank you, Terrance, for that.
Mm-hmm. No, completely. I think Sarah probably is, one of the highest points for there, and something that keeps on. If Elizabeth hadn't passed away, they would have continued with the show.
Oh, yeah.
And and who knows how much longer it would have gone. That's a statement, right there.
And secondarily, I would say the Master.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you could even alternate those two, really.
Especially Roger Delicato's Master.
Exactly. It was basically you finally got, Moriarty to Sherlock Holmes, and it was pretty awesome for that.
I think it's interesting to see how much of Terrance's era has fed into New Who. Sontarans, Ice Warriors didn't originate during his time. He worked on them, with Troughton, but they were featured again in Pertwee. Sarah Jane, the Master. You had Joe Grant come back in the Sarah Jane Adventures. We have Autons. I mean, it's amazing how much New Who has cherry picked from that Pertwee era. How hugely influential that era was on the new show.
Did he help create Unit also? Didn't he? I think
Derek Sherwin did.
Okay.
As the writer of The Invasion, where those characters were introduced. But as far as, transforming them into recurring characters and building a show around, an ensemble cast for the first time, really, other than just companion and doctor, I think he really was influential in that.
He also led the first multi-doctor story. And those stay with us today.
That's true.
That was under his tenure.
That's true. Omega and the whole thing with that, which is pretty awesome. And it's fun because Mark Maddox actually, him and I discussed, because he was working on a project for, I guess, Doctor Who magazine, around the 50th anniversary where he was doing the covers for them. And one of them was what they had originally planned for the three doctors, and they had to rewrite the whole story because Hartnell was too ill to really take part in it. So it was pretty cool, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just neat. And I definitely think he will be missed. And, he was a force in Doctor Who. And, I think we'd love to hear other people's memories from home. Please write us at, earthstationwho@esonetwork.com. We definitely would love to hear from our listeners and thoughts on this topic and everything.
He was the one who coined the phrase, never cruel or cowardly. And that to me just exemplifies the Doctor.
No, that is awesome. Actually, that's a perfect way to, I think, wrap up the segment. Any final thoughts on Terrance Dicks before? Or I think Mary's statement was actually pretty well an ender right there.
Well, also, I'd like to say that his writing is not over. There is a final Doctor Who short story that will be written by Terrance Dicks that will be published in an anthology by BBC Books in October.
Oh, that's
2019.
awesome. Yay.
That's awesome. And we'll figure out when it's out, and we'll post it up on our show notes when it does, so people can actually find it. Well, let's thank everybody for being here tonight and, joining us. Let's thank our guests first. Alan, thank you so much.
I am so glad that you invited me to be part of this episode. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really, really happy to be able to discuss Mr. Dicks and his incredible career and incredible influence on Doctor Who.
Well, thank
It's
you
our
too
pleasure.
for, if it wasn't for you and Timegate and your work there, I don't think I would have either got the chance to meet him. So
I'm so pleased. He was really, really a sweet
And if
guy.
I'm not mistaken, I think the second that year he wasn't originally scheduled, right? I think wasn't it somebody canceled and or something like that? He was a last minute addition. Is that right?
He was the first time. He wasn't a last minute addition, but was he the second time? No, I don't even remember.
Gotcha. But anyway, so thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Well, he stole my thunder on that one. Thanks, Mike.
You can
But
piggyback.
Alan, it's always great. And like I said, like Mike had said, it is because of you guys that, went through Wholanta, Timegate before that you guys introduced us to a lot of Doctor Who guests, but Terrance was one of them that really stuck out to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Me too. Agreed.
And so thank you. Anything you want to promote real quick?
Oh, sure. You can find my newly formed publishing company at cosmicpress.com. That's KOZMIC press.com. I'm going to be republishing my first 3 books under new ISBNs very soon. And then I've got new projects coming next year.
Yay.
All right.
That is awesome. Randy, thank you so much.
Oh, Mike, thank you very much for just letting me be a part of this conversation. Having the opportunity to meet Terrance at Timegate was just really a high point for me as a fan. I've always just loved having the opportunity to meet writers from Doctor Who, but that was the best. So thank you, Alan, and thank you for just letting me be a part of this conversation.
Oh, our pleasure. Anything you want to promote?
No plugs tonight.
Hold on. This is a record. Somebody who's been on the show that didn't have anything to promote. Wow. And speaking of promoting, Mary, thank you so much for everything.
Oh, thank you. It was lovely to talk about Terrance. You did good, Terrance, and you will
Very much
great
so.
in
Anything you want to promote?
You can find my artwork at maryogle.com or on Etsy at eVision Arts.
Fantastic. And Mr. Mike, we made it through another one, sir.
We did, and as always, it's my pleasure.
And, any final thoughts on Terrance Dicks before we head out?
Just if people don't know who he is, just find out more about him. Search the internet and put in a Doctor Who DVD and just enjoy.
That's perfect. That is a great way to look at it. Please, experience this man. His work was, almost 50 years after he started, because he started in 1968 working on Doctor Who. And, you know, his influence is still being felt on the show. And, you know, definitely watch it and go, thanks, Terrance. You know,
I certainly hope that our next Doctor Who episode, which should be the Christmas episode, carries a dedication to him.
Good call.
I'm hoping there's going to be a New Year's or a Christmas special.
There is.
If I may, Mike, I just think if I can just add one more thing, and that is that, you know, Doctor Who is such a worldwide phenomenon, and it seems like more and more people, more and more young people are discovering it every day. And I think that's just an amazing legacy for Terrance. I mean, here we are, you know, 40 years after he was involved in his time writing the John Pertwee stories. We're talking about him now. There's going to be the conversations about Terrance Dicks and his work in Doctor Who and how he brought so much joy to people is going to go on and on and on. And I think that's amazing.
Absolutely.
No,
absolutely.
Can't say anything beyond that. That is true. All right, folks, that's going to wrap up the episode for tonight. Join us in a couple weeks. We will be back, and we are going to be going back to the first Doctor era, actually, and we are looking at the Time Meddler. It's going to be a lot of fun doing that. Speaking of, you know, the first time the Doctor on the show met someone from his own race. So it should be kind of interesting to see. Until then, my name is Mike Faber. We will see you here next time on Your Station Who podcast. Peace. And we are done. Bop.
Barry and I played good cop and bad cop over the years, but we're total opposite, you see. I mean, Barry is the nicest, kindest, gentlest, sweetest man you could ever meet. I've never met anybody who didn't like Barry. You know, you talk to somebody who knew him as well and say, "Oh, but you know, Barry, yes, what a lovely chap," they'd say, you see. I am basically not like that, you know. I mean, I tend to be a bit irascible and can be a bit difficult sometimes, you see. I mean, Barry, bless him, put up with me, you know. I mean, though we would mostly get on very well, but that was more to Barry's credit than it was to mine, because he was very patient and tolerant, you know, and he put up with me very well. And the other thing was, and this was immensely important, in the Bryant and show in times, I was like the dog's body, you know, junior assistant script editor, go away and fix this script which we've cocked up, we're off to the bar kind of thing, see. Barry always treated me as an equal. The other thing I used to say to Barry, you know, they say, you shouldn't have too talented an assistant because he'll be after your job. And I'd say to him, you're really lucky, because the one thing I don't want, Barry, is your job, you see, because it was serious, grown-up, hard work, you know. I mean, like Barry, I became a producer reluctantly many, many, many years later, but I never wanted to produce Who. And, you know, I always used to say the good thing about my job is I've got Barry Letts to do the difficult bits, you see. But he would draw me into the production process. He would occasionally send me off. For instance, you know, when we were doing a photo shoot for the front cover of the Radio Times, Barry couldn't make it, so he'd send me off to be in charge of it, things like that. And as I say, he always said we, and Terrance and I. And I think he saw us as a double act, you know. He used to say we were the guy in Hitchhiker's Guide, a two-headed Beeblebox, you see. We were two heads in one being.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.